Hello and welcome to Talkin Jake, a special edition, because our friend Foolish Bailey is here to yuck some ball with us. And we're going to see where we land. We've got some playoff odd shifts. The NL West race, a little bit of White Sox chat that the people have been begging for, and maybe some injury stuff. Bailey, how are you?
I'm doing well. Happy to be your semi-regular ball yucker.
Yeah. Me and Jolly got into a little bit of a beef because his last appearance was with the one with you, where you two just fought the whole episode. Cherry, I think someone called Cheery Cherry. I saw in the last comment section. So he's still reeling from that. And I thought this would be good, and now the more I've thought about it, it's bad. There was a guy at the gym this morning who looked like a tall version of you, and I debated snapping a pic, and I didn't do it, and now I'm regretting it. But I don't know, snapping pics of people at the gym, that's slightly over the line.
There was a guy on Jeopardy earlier this summer that looked like a taller version of me as well.
Okay.
And it was not, I didn't want to bring it up because he came across kind of obnoxious, kind of a little bit of a know-it-all. And I thought, you know what, for my own reputation, let's not draw some comparisons.
Well, then let's not. And let's talk about what we do know, besides those two freaks. Some baseball. Foolish, and per usual, I will defer the kick as your Falcons get ready for a big season. And where do you want to start it? First on your notes, I see some odds stuff. But if you want to start anywhere else, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I want to talk about playoff odds because it's one of those things where, depending on what kind of website you like to go to, you might see different things. You might get different ideas. And I guess the question that I would get from some people is, how do I sort of, figure out playoff odds, particularly mid-season, right? And I'm just going to make like a quick and simple pitch for Fangraphs. You go to Fangraphs, you go look at their standings. They will show you the odds of a team being a wild card team. They'll show the odds of a team outright winning the division, the odds of getting that bye, all those things. And I think what's good about it is quick to absorb new information because the system itself is actually pretty simple. They've got their, projections from preseason. They've shifted some based on how some players have performed. But the real keys there are, for example, my Braves, right? Austin Riley just got injured.
Yeah.
So the Braves do have a record. They do have a position within the wild card race, but you would actually downgrade them a bit knowing that Austin Riley is going to miss most likely the rest of the regular season. And what their system is able to do is able to just basically remove Austin Riley from that equation and then look at, what other infielders are on the roster. Zach Short, Gio Urshela.
Yes.
Put those in. And that's why I think it's great. It's a fairly simple system, but the reason it works is because it is quick to react to new information in ways that I think a lot of the other playoff odds aren't. And it can kind of treat these teams holistically based on the situation rather than just viewing them as a record and a position, 2 games ahead or 2 games back. So we're looking here at the biggest risers and fallers in terms of playoff odds. And that doesn't mean odd to win the division. That means to make the playoffs,
right.
Period. So I do want to start with our risers because two of the risers, the top 2 risers, in fact, are in the same division. And this is since the All-Star break, which is about 5 weeks ago. The Padres at the All-Star break had a 39% chance of making the playoffs. Right now, it's 96%.
Wow.
And then complementing them, the Diamondbacks, 40% at the All-Star break. Now they're at 89%. These teams are 22-6 in case of the Padres and 22-8 in case of the Diamondbacks since the All-Star break. They've also, made some ads as well with regards to being buyers at the trade deadline. And it is shaping up to be a really interesting NL West race. And, I'll toot my own horn a little bit here because I guess a couple of months ago when we did the buying stock in teams episode, I was all aboard the Padres train. I think I even suggested to you that they could factor into the division race given some of the Dodgers injuries. And that's appears to be happening. I mean, it looks like we've got a 3-horse race. What I will not give myself credit for is the Snakes. because I have doubted the Snakes all year, and that's probably been you. That's probably been you've been on the Snakes train. I've been on the Padres train, and here we are at the end of it, right? And it seems like we're both correct.
Yeah, it's it could be interesting to go back and dig up quotes and stuff. I didn't think the Snakes would happen like this. I mean, no one does. No one predicts a 22-8 stretch, just because that's not how baseball works. But, for me, the D-backs, they were starting to rise, and they were getting bodies back. It started with, Perdomo, Alec Thomas, who's now out. Hello, Jake McCarthy. Wow, where have you been all my life? And then they were also getting some pitching back that, there was a D-backs formula, but you didn't think it was going to look or feel like this. And a little, I guess not for the Padres, which is ironic because these are the post-hype Padres that we wanted them to be. They're doing it without Fernando. And meanwhile, the Snakes are the team that won the National League last year that I don't know if there's going to be any Giants conversation in this, but they're the only team that their roster right now, one of our fun combos the past couple days was who can give one last throttle in this MLB season? The Giants are the only team that I kind of like because of their rotation. But when you look at the NL West, and I guess this is what I'm going to be interested into transferring to next year, is do the divisions matter as much as we think they do with the reduced division games? Or is it just hey, if you are a better team and a better roster, you will prevail? Because the Snakes and the Diamondbacks, before you even get to the juggernaut Dodgers, who are getting a lot of reinforcements back, are kind of showing that, hey, if your roster talent's there and you're good, it shouldn't matter.
No, I mean, that's a good point. And you're seeing more parity kind of across the league because of that balanced schedule. And so I think what's really intriguing to see is the fact that the Dodgers, for example, have the best winning percentage in baseball. I think it's a 591. That projects to 96 wins across 162. That would be potentially the team with the best record, finishing with 96 wins. That's something we have not seen in a long, long time, and is certainly a result of that more balanced schedule because it's if you're in a weaker division, you're less able to beat up on the teams at the bottom there. For the Dodgers, that means fewer games against the Rockies. No offense, Rockies. But that's a big part of it is, and I think it's probably a good thing, but does it feel like it maybe diminishes the importance of head-to-head matchups within the division? Because I'm watching, and look, it's a different outlook right now, but I'm watching my Braves take on the Phillies, and it just doesn't feel like as must win as it normally would be,
Absolutely. I mean, Yankees Red Sox is, baseball's strongest series, right, or when the sport is right and everything is clicking, it's Yankees, it's Red Sox. And yeah, right now it doesn't feel like there's enough games. But at the same time, while you were saying that, I was going back, there was a year the Orioles, was it the Orioles that ran away with, or no, the Rays, the Rays ran away with the division, and I think they were 18-1 against the bad Orioles, or it could have been 17-2. And again, no excuses for my Yankees, but I believe they were closer to 500. And when you look at a lot of numbers, you're like, wait, did the Baltimore Orioles being ass dictate the future of this season? Because that's not how baseball is supposed to work. But I don't have the solution. There was a couple episodes ago I was daydreaming about MLB expansion. Not daydreaming well, by the way, not a lot of thought out thoughts, although we talked right before we went live about some of it. But yeah, I'm in a weird spot where I need more Yankees Red Sox, but we need less of the other stuff, but it needs to be balanced. There's not a good answer. Otherwise I'd bring it.
Yeah. And I'll echo your sentiment. I'm speaking, POV as a Braves fan, but particularly in the late 2010s, it felt like and even early 2020s, it felt like they won divisions because they were the best team against the Marlins. Whereas whatever team that was mounting a challenge, whether it be Phillies or Mets, would seem to stumble against them, So that's true. You you got to win the games you should win. I don't know. I think that's kind of an obvious generality, but that is, less and less prominent in a situation where you're playing a balanced schedule and you play everybody every year.
So in this riser section, I don't want to give away the rest of it. I love myself some NL West. Well, you got the AL team that's everyone's talking about right now. And then the other guys that have just been under the radar all year and are now, I don't know. I had a girl next door moment with the Royals the other day that they're starting 5. I mean, it's like, whoa. Okay, yeah. So you've got an MVP, you've got a statue guy, and you've got 5 guys in your rotation? Like, wow, I should have been looking at you this whole time.
Yeah, I'm surprised by the volume in particular for them because Seth Lugo, I should give a shout out to. It's not just that he's, successfully continued that conversion from reliever back to starter. Here's the stat for me that's really stood out looking at them. Last year, he made 26 starts for the Padres. He threw 146 innings. This year, he has 26 starts already. He's thrown 166. So he has added on volume. He is throwing, I think that's more than 6 innings a start. He's throwing 6 1/3 innings per start, which is, the average right now is 5 1/3. So, it's kind of crazy to think not just, you can kind of convince yourself like, oh, yeah, a reliever can convert to a starter and be like a 5 and dive guy. This guy's been a true workhorse. This guy leads the Major League Baseball, actually. In fact, in innings pitched. Like, that's crazy to me, and that's not something I would have ever anticipated going into this season.
Yeah, I'm a future of baseball and trying to protect guys from injuries, and we don't have solutions. Something I would throw out in an organization is like, hey, if I think they said the UCL isn't fully developed until you're 27, like I would have guys. I know baseball doesn't work like this, but if you could have guys spend a chunk of their time in the pen and then think about stretching guys out to starters. We've seen some success with that between Lugo and I know Jordan Hicks is back in the Giants pen, but there may be something formulaically there. And I don't like saying that word.
Yeah. Can I tell you sort of the problem, is they're not going to make that conversion with the team that drafted and developed them. It's just based on service time clocks, right? You're going to be converting a guy to a starter when he's already, later into his ARB years if he's 27. So that's the pushback there. In an ideal world where, the reserve clause was still in effect and you could have any player as long as you want. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess in my head, because this is going to exclude top prospects, right? But, if you have a young guy get called up into your bullpen who, say, is 25 and his first 2 years are 25, 26, well, let's stretch him out this spring and see if there's a third pitch and maybe – I don't know. I obviously haven't fully calculated it. But, yeah, I'll read it off again – as my computer freezes on me. Just incredible timing. Let's see. I'm a baseball guy. Top of my head. Cole Ragans, Seth Lugo. Michael Wacha is putting together another season. We traded for Lorenzen at the deadline, who's given them a couple good starts. And who am I missing? Come on, Jake.
Florida sinker.
Brady Singer.
Yeah.
Who's been kind of as good, not as good, but kind of as good as like Cole Ragans that, I don't know, top, if you had everyone's rotation and the 5 in it presently right now, I mean, the Royals have to be top 5, top 3.
No, I think that's fair to say. Yeah.
Like, I don't know. And that's like just not the respect we've given to the Royals this year.
I'll maybe take like Mariners, Phillies over them. Phillies don't have Ranger Suarez right now, so that complicates it. But yeah, I mean, they're up there for sure.
Padres would have a good argument, but yeah, I mean, the fact that they are in the mix, I get just not how we viewed the Royals this year. Do you have anything else to add to America's team, the Houston Astros?
Yeah, well, I would relate it to what's happening in the AL Central and the AL West right now is fascinating because the AL West is now the weaker division. It's now the division, in fact, I think in all of Major League Baseball with the leader with the worst record. And that has some pretty big implications because since this like three wild card playoff format has been put into play, I guess that 2021 was the first year they did that. You could just kind of count on like, oh, the Central is going to send one playoff team. It's going to be whoever wins the division, and they're going to have the worst record of all the division winners. And because of that, they're going to have to play a best of three wild card series against whoever the weakest by record wild card team is. And that is appearing to be not the case. It looks like just, if you viewed everything in terms of like coin flips or their odds right now, it would appear that the AL Central is leaning towards sending three playoff teams, those being the Guardians, the Twins, and the who am I missing here? Royals, we just talked about. And so if that's the case, then those guys have a lot to play for, battling for the top of that division, because they're not just battling to, for seeding essentially in a wild card round. It seems like whoever wins that division is going to get the bye straight onto the DS. And it also means that with regards to the AL West, which if we just consider that a race between the Mariners and the Astros, that is a race for either a playoff spot or nothing. It seems unlikely that they would send you see a scenario where the Astros win the division and the Mariners are a wild card team. The record isn't there right now. So that to me is absolutely fascinating. That's really informing some of these playoff odds. That's one reason why the Royals have jumped from 33% to 74% because of how the records shake out. They're saying they don't necessarily have to win the division to make the playoffs. Whereas the Mariners are the greatest faller. They've fallen from 57% to 14%. They're saying you've got to, chase down these Astros or that's it. You're not going in.
Oh, wait. This has never happened. I'm having a premonition. Seattle misses the playoffs.
No, it can't be.
God,
That'd be crazy.
Well, I'm human. I don't like to admit that. But, when I saw the Seattle Mariners, was it a 10-game lead in June?
Something like that.
And it was gone 3 weeks later. When they got that 10-game lead, I was like, you know what? I have to give these Mariners the love they deserve for this rotation. And, Julio's about to go. My goodness. Where they are at and where that franchise is at, like, historically, it's sad. I was going to segue us to the fallers list because the Mariners are on that list. But your Brewers are also listed here. And the only thing I wanted to add to that piece was I'm not locking in an AL Central team for the second bye. I think Houston has the juice right now.
Okay.
That, I don't know, maybe there's those teams are beating each other effect. I don't know if the Twins or Royals get in the mix. The Guardians have been so good this year. It's crazy that no one's about it, really. But I think the Yankees or the Orioles will be there. And I could be very wrong. Again, these are just opinions. And I give Houston a 50-50 chance of catching one of the Central teams.
I'll point this out too. Just to play a little devil's advocate.
Sure.
Because you're talking about the beating up on each other effect. Well, we're playing fewer games. We just discussed this. We're playing fewer head-to-head games. And so if you want to take the Astros ahead of either one of those teams individually to beat them, sure. I'm totally down with that. But if you view it in terms of the field, like you've got, three teams in the Central there with 70-plus wins. Yeah. It only takes one of them to take off,
True.
To bury the Astros within that, at the very least, where you have the West winner having to play that wild card series. So, and I actually looked at this too. The playoff odds currently give the West winner, whoever that would be, about a 17% chance of getting that bye. Whereas in the National League, it's much more open because those teams at the top of the division have similar enough records that it could really go either way.
Yeah, and they're knocking your Brewers for that. Interesting.
Yeah, I know, because the Brewers record-wise are pretty similar, but the idea is that they have still only a 33% chance of getting that bye, assuming they win the division, which it seems like they almost certainly will.
Yeah, the America's manager, Pat Murphy, the Brewers with one final hot stretch, and the rest of that division just being such a disappointment to the baseball society. I don't know. The Cubs have an easy stretch coming.
You love a strength of schedule. You're a big strength of schedule guy.
I want to be more about it. And my advanced stat that I haven't come up with, that I'll lock you, Eno, Saris, and Jimmy in a room one day and make happen an adjusted strength of schedule with how the team is playing before and after they play you.
Yeah. Total hair mismatch for Jimmy there, by the way.
Yeah.
Between the two of us.
It's, man, I don't know what this is, and if anyone wants to comment or subscribe, that's how the pros do it. Something about Eno Saris hit such a weird chord on me that, like, I don't know if it's like I just respect that he's smarter than me or he's seen more life or that he's, like, cooler than me. But, yeah, I don't know. I turned into, like, not a troll on Twitter yesterday, but I just like feeding the beast. And he called, who did he call? He called someone yesterday a K-God.
What does that mean? Oh, strikeouts. Okay.
Yeah, he was talking about Jared Jones. And I wanted to poke the bear and be like, tell me about God. And I just want to know where Eno Saris's brain goes with stuff.
Yeah,
I guess so.
That's when he tells you that God is like a craft beer that they make at one brewery in Oregon. I
saw it in a sandwich once. I like him a lot. So where does that leave us now? More of the fallers?
Yeah, we can talk about some of these fallers, and I guess we can start in that NL Central. And it's interesting. I think you could also compare and contrast the AL West to the NL Central just a little bit, because you had, going back a few months ago, you had the presumptive leader, right, with the Brewers and the Mariners. And what's happened is what ended up happening is the AL West itself ended up mounting a challenge to those Mariners in the form of the Astros surging, and that just has not taken place in the NL Central. And so that's not to like say the Brewers are not deserving of winning this division or that they're not better than the Mariners, for example, but that is true. They were in somewhat similar positions throughout the earlier goings of the season, and what's happened is that the AL West has managed to rally back in the form of the Astros, and the NL Central it hasn't. So the Cardinals had a 42% playoff chance at the All-Star break. Again, this is according to Fangraphs playoff odds. Now it's 2%. They are 11-18 since the All-Star break. The Pirates were at 17%, believe it or not. Now it's sub 1%, and they're in last place in that division, I believe.
Don't get me started on the Pirates. That deadline
may just be a year early on them. Are we excited about the 2025 Pirates?
There will be a hype train because of the pitching, but I am in the length of the baseball season, you need hitting in a lineup. And they have some pieces there. I couldn't believe where Key Bryan was a couple weeks ago when I checked in. My goodness. It'll be interesting to see how they support that. And what does that mean in the NL Central, where the Brewers just kind of laugh at what every organization does? I think the Reds don't value what the Brewers value, and the Brewers just laugh at them because they're like, well, we win. I think the Cubs are more obsessed with looking in the mirror in their front office than the product on the field. That's a dirty thing to say by me.
That is a dirty thing.
Oh, my God. Do I think that way? Dude,
it's 12:05 p.m.
Dude, they piss me off. So I've said this a ton on here, and I've probably said it to you, but I'll do it quickly. They did their Cubs off-season Cubs Fest or whatever, and they copied a Lollapalooza sign, and they led it with Jed Hoyer and Craig Counsell. And meanwhile, it was like 10 rows below was like Dansby Swanson, Ian Happ. 10 rows below that was Ryne Sandberg and Fergie Jenkins in like the smallest font. I was like, what the fuck are you doing? How did this get approved? And I wear that way too angrily.
No, I first of all, I didn't know about this, but that is hilarious. That is funny that like Jed Hoyer is like the headliner, like he's,
Yes.
Beyonce or The Weeknd or something. And then Fergie Jenkins is like a garage rock band from Detroit that you've never heard of.
I might have to dig up the tweet. I do this once a month.
I had a sneaky hard time finding it.
It's hard to find, but I did find it. I forget
you found it once. I gotta look
who
through that
needed
chat.
it. Okay. So we're. Excuse me. What next, Bailey? That's good hosting. That's good hosting.
Yeah, good hosting. Let's see. Is there anything else here we want to hit on? I guess just in with regards to the NL wild card, the Padres and the D-backs have made themselves very relevant in that race, if not the division. So I think if we're under the assumption that the NL West is sending 3 playoff teams, then that leaves a wild card up for the NL East non-winner. Runner up. And so what's interesting is the Mets and Braves are both fallers. And I think that's probably because of the surging Padres and D-backs. But the Mets right now, they're at 20% odds. The Braves are at 80% odds. And yeah, I think it's just one of those is going to get a wild card spot and one of those isn't at this point. And so the fact that that adds up to 100% is somewhat satisfying to me.
Yeah, that is nice. And yeah, we do have, there's the tweet for you to see, Bailey.
Okay, Ryan Sandberg and Billy Williams got some love.
I had Ryan. I had Ryan lower. There is, I mean, again, I can't see the names. There are guys on that bottom line that are like, and I don't know if it's supposed to be ironical. Like
Kerry Wood's at the bottom.
Kerry Wood is bottom row. John Lester is on the third to bottom row.
Matt Caesar's on the bottom.
Does it get alphabetical once we get to Alzolay? Is that what's happening here? No, I guess not.
No, man. And again, just the fact that Counsell and Hoyer are on top, that's, I see Justin Steele. I don't know, man. That, for whatever Jakey smoke detector sensor I have in my body, this has been the one that has lurked over my head for, months. 9 months. That's disturbing.
Well, just don't tell it to Boone. Don't say Boone if they make a Yankees vest. You can't be at the top.
I think my Yankees would have that graphic figured out, although they don't have a lot of other stuff figured out, unfortunately. Where are you at with your Braves, Bailey?
Ben Zobrist.
I really, when Acuna and Strider first, when they went down, I was really hoping that like they could kind of play the role of scrappy underdog team in a way that they really hadn't been able to, because they've been front runners for the last couple of years, and that hasn't really come into fruition in this regular season. Phillies still have a pretty solid lead on us. It seems like we're resigned to scraping our way in via the wild card. There's still a chance to do that in the playoffs, right? Like who knows? Maybe they could do what the Phillies did to them the last couple years. But I don't feel great about it. But I'm willing to excuse them a little bit because we can maybe transition now to the injury talk.
Sure.
This team lost the Cy Young favorite and MVP favorite within the first month and a half of the season. I don't what other team would be willing to, withstand that. So I'm okay with where they're at. I do think what's been exposed though is that they haven't prioritized depth much these past few years, because actually, if you look at it in terms of 2021 and 2022 and 2023, let's say 21 post Acuna ACL tear, the guys have played. If you go look at their 2023 lineup, the record setter, everyone played at least 139 games. That was the minimum. And so you didn't have to worry about how's my bench situation? How's my fourth outfielder? How's my bench infielder? You didn't have to worry about that because everyone played every single day. And this year that hasn't been the case. And there's been a lot of, they just grabbed Gio Urshela, and Whit Merrifield is in the lineup as an everyday player, guys who have just been kind of cast away or waived or whatever. And I just, I kind of wish maybe they'd prioritized it a little bit different in the offseason. Just looking at some of those spots, getting, maybe young, optionable talent or something like that. And that has not been a priority for them because they've literally had roster spots that they don't use, right? Like that's kind of been their MO because everyone plays every day.
Well, that was and again, the Braves very much end up on top of this, but Vaughn Grissom was their depth piece. And they flipped him for this injured pitcher that hadn't thrown a lot of innings the past 5 years or whatever.
He was making a lot of money too.
And then they extended him, even though he was making a lot of money. And now he's going to win the Cy Young.
Now he's the one guy who's healthy on the team all year.
So I don't know. Bailey, we're going to put a fake mustache on you one day. Maybe glasses off, maybe contacts, and we need you to find out what the Braves Foundation really does. Because I think, I don't know, man. I don't know if they're getting stem cells from Germany. I don't know what goes on there, but something's happening because how is Chris Sale doing this?
I also joke about it constantly. Like if I'm talking to a Braves player, which isn't that often, but I'll be like, just so you know, 1% of this conversation will go to the Braves Foundation at the end of it. Just everything I do in life, I don't know how, but 1% of it will go to the Braves. If I buy a box of cereal, a few little pieces of cereal will go to the Braves Foundation.
For another day. Okay, what other injury notes do you have? You mentioned your Braves and how much they've been affected. I was surprised today when I brought up the one run game records, how low the Braves were on that list, it's hard to make that a glass half full in truth, but you also can because that's luck in theory. In theory, obviously how you're performing does tie into that. But it's something that big league teams have tried to control for years and they can't, which makes us say luck. So I don't know, the fact that the Braves, I'm going to have a level of blinders on that. When I saw they were 6 games out today, when I saw the 1-run game record, when I saw they were on a little win streak, I was like, wait, there's still there's a body in there of the Atlanta Braves that could still beat you up.
And they're playing the Phillies right now, and I think they still have the majority of their games within the season against the Phillies yet to come. So who knows?
I don't know. It looks like your Dodgers have also been dealing with the injury bug, which is insane to think about.
Yeah, so I mean, and so this is what's interesting. So I was looking particularly at Baseball Prospectus. They have an injury tool that will basically just try to estimate how many wins a team has lost via injury or IL stints. And it's pretty interesting, too, because there's a couple ways you can look at it. You can say, well, the Braves and the Dodgers, they're missing 9, and I'm going to use the Baseball Prospectus terminology here because it's their tool. WARP.
Nice.
Not war, WARP. But you can think of it as wins as well for the folks back home, especially my Dan Patrick listeners out there.
Yes.
So the Dodgers and Braves are both missing about 9 wins this year, based on who's been on the injured list. For the Dodgers, that is kind of been in bulk. That's Glasnow, Kershaw, Yamamoto in the rotation. Betts, of course, missed some time and is just now kind of getting back into the groove of things. Muncy's missed some time and he's been good for them. So they missed out on his production as well. For the Braves, it's a little more obvious. It's Strider, it's Acuna, but also Albies and Fried have missed time. And now Riley is set to miss some time, although that isn't built in yet. Like It'll be more like the more games they play without Riley, the more wins they will lose because they don't have Riley. That's, it doesn't necessarily project it. But what essentially they're saying here is, okay, those teams are losing, 20% of their projected WARP because of those injuries. But the thing is, you can really look at injuries, a couple of ways. You could look at it in terms of those total wins, but obviously the teams that lose the most wins are going to be the most talented rosters to begin with, right? You have to have the wins on your roster in the first place in order to lose them via injury. And so what's interesting is if you look at it in terms of the percentage of WARP, the White Sox are the worst team because they have lost 27% of their projected WARP, even though they've only lost 4 WARP. And it's really the simple fact of the matter is it's like you look at them and you're like, yeah, well, Luis Robert missed 2 months and that's like their only really good player,
That's it.
so, or at least who only would have been projected coming into the season as their good player. Shouts to Garrett Crochet, but I did not see that coming necessarily. And I don't think
Right.
projection systems did either. So that's two ways of looking at it is you can look at it as percentage, or you can look at it in terms of total wins. But I think if you look at it in total wins, then it's going to be biased towards the teams with the best rosters in the first place. But it is intriguing though, because I will say, the Dodgers have lost 9 wins. The D-backs and the Padres are at 5 and 4 wins, respectively. So they have stayed healthier, and those are the teams they're going against in the division. And then the Phillies have only lost 3 wins, according to Baseball Prospectus, which surprises me because they have had their star players miss time. The difference between them and the Braves is that when the Phillies star players miss time, they only miss a little bit. So right. Turner missed a little bit. Harper missed a little bit. Real Muto missed the most out of these guys. I think he missed maybe 5 weeks or something like that. And now Ranger Suarez is on the injured list and has missed, a couple of starts. But the point is, for the Braves, when you lose guys in April and May, it's catastrophic because you don't have them for the whole year. The Phillies, it's more like, 15-day IL stints and then you're back. But both of those teams have missed guys, but the value of it has manifested itself in different ways. And it's interesting to think, the Braves are at 9 wins. The Phillies are at 3 wins lost. You said it yourself, they're 6 games behind, so maybe things are even if the injury luck is a little bit more even.
Now, again, I'm newer to WARP, but does it take into effect their performance this season? Like Real Muto hasn't been playing at a Real Muto level, but his WAR would go off his projected WAR this season.
For the way the Baseball Prospectus tool functions, in this case, it's looking at WARP based on the preseason projection only, which is why the White Sox are so dinged, for example, by losing Luis Robert. But yeah, it's So that's what's happening here. In effect, is we're only looking at the preseason projection. But I will point out, probably the preseason projection for Real Muto wasn't that great in the first place to begin with, because he had kind of a rough 2023 by his standards.
And he's old, Bailey. 33. Dig his grave for him.
And the defensive metrics for him had gone down a lot too, and that had an effect on that WARP.
Okay, it's always fun finding out a new stat. Does this lead you into more of your White Sox talk?
Yeah, I suppose it does.
I won't let you cook yet, and I can't believe that's become a fucking part of my verbiage. It's so dumb. Dan Rourke just winked to me. Nice. I was going to ask you a second ago, and I forgot you had White Sox stuff prepared. If the White Sox were an out of the park baseball franchise, do you like their current moves? Or where they've gotten to since they've decided that they're awful. And then that probably just gets in the way of a whole conversation you had prepared, so maybe I'll forget about it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't envy them. The Crochet thing was kind of unprecedented, like this obviously would have been the year to trade him, and with the breakout and everything, I don't really know how they should have handled that situation necessarily. I don't really have like a positive or negative association with what Crochet did. I just think that it's like, I think for him, if going forward, he's going to be like one of those, I want to win types, then that's clearly not his top priority, because he could have gotten out of Dodge, but he was looking out after his own self-interest, which is fine as a player to do. But I don't want him to turn around, later on, and when the White Sox are bad again, and say, I want to get traded, I want to go to a winning team, when you had your chance,
right? In theory, yeah.
I guess it's fine. I don't necessarily feel like they were pressed to trade Luis Robert like maybe some people were. I think that's their decision to make. And if he were having a year like he was last year, then maybe, right? But he wasn't. He had missed a good bit of time, which I think sort of drums up the chief concerns about him in the first place. So if they want to try to sell high on him next year with better timing, I think it's fine. I think they've conducted themselves fine. It's just the team sucks, so there's no way to really dig out of that hole.
Yeah, for me, and we've done this a little bit, I'm a little opposite on both. Well, Luis Robert, you would have been selling low That I would have pulled Luis Robert in and say like, hey man, I get it. This is probably tough. But if you're out there for the rest of the season and you get your OPS above 100, you probably can be playing on another team next year. And that would probably be a good thing for you, to be completely honest.
Right.
So I understood the Robert part. I'm putting it as a feather in my hat that maybe I don't deserve, but early on, the Crochet thing never made sense to me because we flew past whatever fake innings limit you would have or whatever the book would say is the right thing to do. That, the White Sox are going to value him as they're trading an ace with a couple years of control, where half of the equation was smart teams could not pencil Garrett Crochet into their playoff rotation this year. Right. There was months of baseball to go. And then Crochet, kind of nuked the whole thing because even if you figured out like, hey, all right, he's going to be a pitching weapon for us, you almost viewed him as Ray's style. Then we have an ace the next couple years that you can start to get really close to whatever the right package is. And then he nuked the whole thing when he said, I'm not willing to pitch out of the bullpen, which I do respect that part of it. Like, okay, so I've flown past whatever my innings are going to be this year, and now teams could be asking me to pitch 3 straight days when I see myself as a future ace in this league. I kind of shown I can be. I did respect that side for him, and I didn't think the trade value part of it worked in my head.
Yeah, it didn't. It wasn't conducive with the deal being done at the trade deadline.
Yes. So what else do we have on your White Sox?
I just don't think there's been enough coverage. Like and we go. Everyone frequents different places for their baseball coverage. They could be here. They might watch MLB Network or ESPN. They might have other podcasts that they listen to, which of course would be cheating. You can't cheat on us. This is the only podcast you're allowed to listen to if you're listening right now. So here's what I compare it to. And maybe it's because baseball was in just a different place 20 years ago. Like when I was a kid,
the
2003 Tigers, it was a big deal.
Yeah, it was.
It was.
You're right.
It was a big deal. It was talked about every day. What they were particularly going for or trying to avoid, I should say, was the most losses in the modern era in American League / National League history. They lost 119 games, won 43 of them, and that put them just short of the mark set by the 62 Mets, who won 40 games and lost 120 games. So it was about the total losses in this case. And I remember when the Tigers clinched not having the worst record ever, they celebrated on the field.
Yeah.
They just clinched the playoff spot or something like that. Like it was like, and I was a kid. I thought it was nice because it showed that it meant something to them not to be the worst team ever, basically. And you'll recall, by the way, they were back in the playoffs, like I think 2 years after that or something crazy. Like they turned it around pretty fast after that. I don't know if the same fate is ahead for the White Sox, but the White Sox right now, they have by winning percentage, the second worst win-loss record in what I'm going to refer to as AL/NL history. So since the American League was founded in 1901 onward, and it's 236, and so because of that, they're pacing for 124 losses, which would be the most losses we've seen in that modern baseball era. And it just feels like the 2003 Tigers got so much grief all year and so much coverage, and I would even compare it to the Oakland A's, the start they had last year, where everyone was writing their worst team ever column in May, and it just feels like, I don't know if it's just because this White Sox team is just sad. Is it because they're just sad? But it just feels like it deserves more coverage, and it feels like I don't want to like put that much negativity in the world, but like it's very interesting that a baseball team in this era of parity, in this era of the balanced schedules, in this era where the most winning team this year is on pace for 96 wins, that there might be a team that loses 124 games, and they're not even playing in a small market, and they're not even necessarily owned by someone that's trying to tank the team to move them.
Right. I mean, this team in theory should be in the current affairs of baseball, one of the biggest market teams in a division that every other team complains about being a small market and we can't keep up. How the White Sox have landed here is insanity.
Yeah, and the thing that I found most startling about this team is, and I like this. This is a good episode because we're going Fangraphs, we're going Baseball Prospectus. I did a little stat head earlier. Now we're going back to Fangraphs. The position players as a whole, the batters, have been worth negative 5.8 FWAR. That is just unbelievable. That's the very definition of replacement level is that the worst it should be is 0, right? Because you should be able to call up the quad A guy and he should be worth exactly 0 WAR. He should be replacement level. Their lineup as a whole is negative 5.8 WAR. They have the worst offensive numbers, which is fine. Like, a bad team is allowed to have a bad lineup, but they are also the worst defensive team in the league. And that's what's driving me crazy too, because generally, like, yeah, a bad team might have, bad hitters in the lineup, but there's some sort of reason why they're big leaguers, and maybe they play really good defense or something like that. And that's the way you cheap out and try to build the winningest team you have with the chips you have available. That's crazy to me that they're this bad, that they're the worst hitting team and they're the worst fielding team, and that they're well below replacement level when that shouldn't happen. It just shouldn't happen.
I hate to expose myself on this. Have any of you baseball video freaks done anything on this Tigers team yet?
No, I have done something on and I want to get the year right here. I want to say 1899 Cleveland Spiders, which was it's the franchise that no longer exists. But basically they are before that modern era, they're the losingest team. I think they lost like 134 games in the year. And it was basically because the owner of the Cleveland Spiders bought the team that is now the St. Louis Cardinals, and then literally transferred all the good players from the Spiders over to the Cardinals. They weren't called the Cardinals at the time. So that's like a different situation, obviously. But yes, I mean, someone, Jolly, myself, I'll shout out a few others, Sports Storm, someone like that should do a little a deep dive on those 2003 Tigers. Because I was a kid, but like I lived it and remember it like very clearly, like watching this team try to avoid infamy.
Well, that's what. Let me do baseball people porn quick and start reading names, because that's what guys love. Brandon Inge behind the dish.
Right, and some of those guys, by the way, stayed around to be on good Tigers teams.
Carlos Pena, 131 games on that team. Craig Monroe. Dimitri Young, balled out. Best player on the team by far, 909 OPS. And then, you've got your...
Do we got a Bobby Higginson on there?
Bobby
Do I got
Higginson,
my years right?
Yep. Omar Infante played a little bit.
Is Maglio there yet?
Hiram Boca Chica, nope.
No Maglio? Okay.
On the pitching staff, I mean, Mike Maroth, Jeremy Bonderman. It really doesn't get better. Steve Sparks was knuckling for them. A young Fernando Rodney had a 6 ERA. In
Fernando
games.
Rodney, that's good.
So yeah, I'm gonna leave dibs on that for you for like a month, and then I'm gonna kick Jolly. Because man, there other things of note here. We are 1-17 out of the gate. That leads to 3-25. That leads to 18-61. That leads to 33-99. And then, and spoiler for this video that everyone's gonna watch you make, or Jolly, or Sports Motion, is the name?
Yeah, Sports Motion, Sports Storm.
Sports Storm, excuse me. Spoiler. If you need to see them do this video, they win the last 5 out of 6. And they've done nothing close to that throughout the season. So, yeah, I'm glad they celebrated.
Yeah, they should have.
What an absolute electric factory.
I'm going to leave you with one more thought, too. And again, part of this discussion is, baseball's kind of in a different place in the American zeitgeist than it was 20 years ago. Maybe that's why there's more interest in this Tigers team than this White Sox team. But last year, the Pistons losing streak I found fascinating. and I don't really care much about NBA, especially not regular season, but that was something that was covered, and they kept on losing and losing and losing. And then when the White Sox put together a similar streak, there just doesn't seem to be any interest. And I don't want to sound like I want to promote this terrible team, but I kind of do. Like, it's interesting,
Right.
just like that Tigers team we're going through is interesting. 20 years from now, we're going to look back at this White Sox team and be like, wow, Luis Robert was on that team until, he became a Hall of Famer with the Orioles and second, right. Like, we don't know,
Yeah, no, you're absolutely, we're going to do exactly what I just did. Whoa, Crochet was great that year. And
yeah, they were like, Crochet was a starter, and now he's the closer for the World Series winning expansion Expos.
Wait, they called up Duke Ellis? Well, foolish. Maybe America's over losing. I don't know. That's not what this country was built on.
Well, based on these Olympics, certainly not. We're all about winning.
Well, and that's why I wanted to bring up the election. No, we'll circle back on that next time. I do. I'm going to put you on the spot for one thing, and as we always try to do, and I want to do this earlier when they got brought up, you said you have a Snakes video in the work, so
Yes.
I am one of the pillars that franchise is built on, so excited for that to come out. I wanted to ask you, because I asked you how you research it last time. If I said foolish, and I'm putting you on the spot, and I feel rude about it, but I don't. If I said, give me 3 prospects that people are not talking about that are now Juicy Lucy in the Foolish Bailey world. And if it's not 3, I understand, but prospects that weren't on these preseason top 100 charts that are now guys that you are about.
So he's made his debut, but now he's currently still retains prospect status. Zebby Matthews.
Okay, you're on the Zebby
Twins,
train.
has made a big Zebby, by the way, short for Zebulon.
Love that.
So that's pretty good. I do want to get this guy's name right. Because I think I have it right. You're kind of putting me on the spot.
I know. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh, got it. Chandler Simpson of the Rays.
Okay.
He's doing kind of the Billy Hamilton rise right now, just in terms of the speed and the stolen bases. So if you're just looking for like a fun, 1 or 2 tool guy, like here's a guy who's going to make a lot of contact and steal a lot of bases. That's going to be Chandler Simpson of actually BBD. If you want to bring up his minor league numbers right now,
I'm one step ahead of you, 2 steps ahead of the CIA. He had 94 swipes across A and high A last year. He currently has 84 in high A and double A this year with an 807 OPS and a 408 on base. The speedster we've dreamt of.
Yes, this is the man who's coming to save baseball from itself.
Oh my God. Can you imagine if he comes up and he's good and just all the conversation people will have around that?
Yeah. Third prospect I'll give you, I'm going to say Alex Freeland, who is a shortstop / just infielder in general in the Dodgers system. He's a guy with helium this year. He's going to be on top 100 prospects lists next year when he wasn't necessarily this year.
Wow. Yeah, he's putting up some numbers and the stolen bases too. We love an athlete. And foolish, thank you again. Putting you on the spot for that was tough. Something that we just fell into after recording Talkin Baseball with Hassan Kim going down is that we're tagging it, but you can steal or maybe piss off Trev with it at some point. The Padres are a team full of shortstops without a shortstop right now.
Yeah,
it's unreal. Tyler Wade has been playing shortstop the past couple games. While meanwhile, literally the rest of the lineup, minus the freight train David Peralta and their DH of Luis Arise, are not shortstops.
Yeah. Well, and Kim, he'd been a little bit below his hitting standard that he set last year, but I think he's still one of their absolute top players by WAR, just because of what he gives with the shortstop defense and then in the base running. So he's a huge loss, even if they're only losing like a league average-ish bat.
That will be interesting. Bailey, you have been nothing but interesting, delicious. Excited for you to get through the dog days. Take care of yourself. Golly, take care of yourself. And we'll probably we'll see you come September, Labor Day.
Somewhere around there.
Oh my God! And then it's going to be the postseason. We're almost there, Bailey. Pretty crazy to look at. Like 5 weeks out.
Yeah.
My God. Hey, thank you so much, brother. I appreciate you. Everyone go follow and check out Foolish Bailey. Snakes Alive. We will see you next time. Beebs, tell them about Uncle Dan.
Talkin Jake is a production of Dan Patrick Productions, John Boy Media, and Workhouse Media.